The dam is breaking, vaccine injuries coming out of the shadows into the limelight. Hey, mainstream media is now reporting this. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Chris Martenson of Peak Prosperity here with another scattering report. It looks like it's July 1st, 2024. Wow, the common knowledge game is afoot. Remember, private knowledge is when you or I know something, or even everybody knows something, but common knowledge is when everybody knows that everybody knows something. We are there, and this is what I am talking about. Common knowledge alert. This is from Vigilant Fox, doing great work here, pushing stuff out on Twitter. And if it wasn't for Twitter, I wouldn't know half of what I know at this point in time. So thank you, Elon Musk, for opening this back up. And maybe not perfectly, but way better than close enough to perfect to be good enough. Let's talk about this really quickly. This is amazing. So this is on a show called Spotlight in Australia. Listen to common knowledge is when everybody knows that everybody knows, and you will recognize it when suddenly people feel okay expressing what they actually think. This is a little hard to hear because the volume's low on this. I couldn't find a way to adjust it, but read the words down below. And there's a shout out from the audience at one point about safe and effective. Listen in.
Medical technologies and advancements we made, particularly vaccination. Yeah, vaccination. I'm sorry.
It's not safe and it's not effective.
I disagree with that, but it's important. What this audience is saying is also important because we will have another pandemic. And we need to have the public on board. We need them to understand. They need to have faith in the government surveillance systems, the health surveillance systems.
Hang on. Let me just, I'm asking, let Sanjay finish the point.
We need to have an open and transparent and better process for the next pandemic.
Robert, you're fine.
I think at the end of the day, we are sitting.
Wow, that's a very big deal. The audience is laughing. They're openly mocking him. They're shouting stuff out. They're like shaking their heads. Their arms are folded. Nobody is buying this bull turd explanation of things anymore, right? And so this is a really big moment. So if everybody knows what everybody knows, now this is critical. People should have been able to ask questions. We deserve to have had answers well before now, but people like this guy, Sanjay here, have been doing everything they possibly can to block inquiry and then pretend as if we're doing everything we can to look into it. This is kind of like the O.J. Simpson of looking into Nicole Simpson's murder, right? It's just that's just how these people operate. So let's take this down a little bit further because this is really important. Let's see. Nope, I'm going to take this back to this is really critical here. Shoot, Twitter. 1 second. It makes me refresh it all the time now in order to get it to play. We're going to go to about 4.5 minutes here. Yeah, Spotlight.
Simply heartbreaking. Ian and Penny, thank you very much for being here this evening as well. I know that's very hard.
So Ian and Penny, their daughter was given a Pfizer vaccination, died within days. That's, I believe, her brother right there. You'll see he's crying. So this is a family that's been, obviously very injured. A lot of support from the audience.
Also, Annika and Jonathan, her siblings as well. Thank you very, very much for being here and sharing that story with us. Robert, let me go to you. I mean, it used to take about 10 years for a vaccine to be approved. Should we have trusted something coming onto the market so quickly after about 12 months maximum of testing?
Yes, it was less than 12 months. And those vaccines were based on 10 years of experience.
No. I'm going to have to get my data paddle out here. We never had 10 years of experience with these vaccines, okay? These vaccines used methyl pseudouridine at every possible uracil spot. These vaccines were based around a spike protein that had its own toxic profile. You can't say that because we did some very small limited trials once upon a time with an entirely different construct, a different form of mRNA, different everything, that somehow we have 10 years of experience. But this is Professor Robert Bouie. I don't know how you pronounce that.
We're using the mRNA platform, using the viral vector platform. Both of them had gone into trials with different diseases 10 years earlier. So we had more up our sleeve than people thought. And what they...
No, we had absolutely nothing up our sleeve. We had nothing. We had nothing up our sleeve because you don't know how these particular things are going to behave until you test them. This is the big world of biologics. professor, because that's just how biology works, right? Even the tiniest change, you should know this as a professor of biology in theory, right? Which is that if I just put a methyl group on something, I can completely change it, right? Oh, Chris, we've had dozens of years of experience with ethane. I hardly see how important it is that we put an OH group on there. Oh, we've made ethanol? Ethanol behaves differently in the human body than ethane? Well, it's just a single OH group. Honestly, we've had decades of experience with ethane. I don't understand your point, right? It's just, what a nut.
Did was to run parallel studies, phase 1, then phase 2, then phase 3 proving it was effective in tens of thousands.
They didn't, though, right? Because you know this. You know what the phase 3 trials were, right? Dr. Robert, what a neckbeard. Listen, I have a lot of contempt for this guy, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. So these phase 3s, what did they actually show? They didn't show anything, right? The phase 3 trials that both Moderna and Pfizer actually ran, all they did was they put this stuff into people, and then they measured by PCR test, and I have never been able to find out what their cycle thresholds were, whether or not they could detect fragments of this virus in one set of group of people versus another. That's it. That's all the data they had. They didn't know if it stopped disease. They didn't know if it stopped people from going to the hospital. They didn't know if the outcomes were better or worse. They didn't know if it stopped transmission. And of course, now we know, once they did have to release all the trial data, that in fact, just as many people, in fact, 6 more people died in the vaccine arm than the control arm. Those are the facts. Okay? So again, don't make me bust my paddle out, big guy, because you're not going to like this, okay?
So that they sped it up, but they didn't cut corners. The safety was an issue, and we do recognise that AstraZeneca vaccine was associated with serious clots.
They recognize that because that was the one they wanted to throw under the bus. In truth, vastly more injuries were recorded and logged into the VAERS system, and even that's a very, very steep undercounting, as we all know. Vastly more were recorded for both Moderna and Pfizer in particular than for the AstraZeneca. But they wanted to throw that one under the bus because for some reason, he's part of the crew of people that wants to get mRNA in every arm. I don't know why they're so desperate to do that, but that's their program.
And did result in serious cases and deaths. We recognise that. But
why didn't we know that at the time, though, if there was that 10 years of research beforehand?
Because it had never been given to tens of thousands. You only found it out when tens of thousands got it, because the risk was about 1 in 50,000. But if you...
The risk of what was 1 in 50,000?
The risk was 5 to 10 times higher. So it was, if we let rip and got COVID, we would have people having Delta and getting clots in their lungs and in their brains at a probably 10 times higher rate.
Okay. Delta, that was a beast. But remember, Delta was only with us for 2 months out of this whole misadventure, right? Because it was quickly supplanted and replaced. Delta came out summer, say July, August 2021. By October, late, when did Omicron come out? November, right? So maybe 3-4 months of Delta, but that's it. And then it was gone. So you're still recommending that people get this horrid stuff for Omicron, which totally, you can't, it's not like there's one thing. This drives me nuts. There's no such thing as COVID. There was Alpha, which was different from Beta, which was different from Delta, Gamma. All of them were different, and all of them are wildly different from Omicron, which doesn't even look like them. Genetically, it's just so different that, of course, that came from a lab too, probably. And I don't know if that was white hat or black hat. We don't know that yet. But at any rate, it did make all the Delta go away. So he's cherry picking, which I hate, which is I'm going to have to get the data paddle out. You, sir, are a monster. You are a horrible, horrible human being. Let's carry on.
Let's go to the audience now. I know there's a lot of questions.
Okay, so this doctor, though, and shame on this news organization for not getting to this because, oh, look, Aussie 17 here does yeoman's excellent work in uncovering all this stuff. Here's that doctor. Took lots of money from pharma. Took money from GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Glaxo, Sanofi, Glaxo, Merck, Clanson, Merck, Glaxo. This guy's raking in thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. We can also see just how cheaply you can buy a defective mouthpiece like this gentleman here. Not this guy, but let me back it up. You know, that guy right there, right? So that's who this guy is. Now, yeah, there he is. That's him. That's Dr. Robert Bowie. Let's remind ourselves that back in 2020, December 2020, so the vaccine has not even come out yet. It's only gone through these really defective phase 3 trials, which only ran for a few months. They can't answer anything at all. And this professor's already on record, even before he's seen any real world data. Choose vaccination or go to heaven early, professor says. So I think we can understand where he's coming from. But of course, we understand why he's coming from this direction, because he receives money to say things like this. That's who this guy is. They put him up as the voice of reason, and he's a professor, and we should listen to him. Listen, if we've learned one thing at all in this whole COVID misadventure, especially this vaccine misadventure, is you can't trust experts. But if we can't trust experts about this, what else can't we trust experts about? And I got to tell you, they are all now on the chopping block. Listen, experts, if you don't self-police your organization, if like the climate scientists allow some climate scientists to go out there and say stupid things and mismanage data and not call them out on it, it calls your work into question too, even if you're doing great work in that field. Same for scientists, same for doctors, same for universities. This is a really big problem. So look at this in December of 2020, right? This is what he's saying. Those who choose to refuse the COVID-19 jab can go to heaven early, says Dr. Sydney University professor Robert Bui. Says people have a choice whether to get vaccinated against the coronavirus. The risk-benefit ratio is so strongly in favor of vaccination. But again, this should be easy. Like this good doctor, by this point in time, by December of 2020, we knew the risk stratification. He's not saying elderly people with comorbidities. He's not saying everybody over 70, particularly if you're over 80, and especially if you're over 90. He's not saying that. He's not saying, hey, people under the age of 40 who are healthy have almost no risk from COVID. He's saying everybody has to go get this or risk going to heaven early. He was part of the machine that lied. This guy is a lying sack. And if he's not, then he's totally ignorant and he's a complete moron. I don't know, pick which is worse, right? And a university professor. But this is a real problem that this guy said what he said, okay? Not a good look. It's very much a very bad look. All of this stuff he says in his opening monologue here is all actually lies, right? Or
to take about 10 years
for
a vaccine to be approved, should we have trusted something coming onto the market so quickly after about 12 months maximum of testing?
Yes, it was less than 12 months. And those vaccines were based on 10 years of experience using the mRNA platform, using the
0 years of experience with these particular configurations of proteins. Remember, what the mRNA is designed to do is trick your body into producing a foreign protein that your cells are not supposed to produce. When your body is producing things it is not supposed to produce, whether it's a cancer, whether it's got a bacterial infection, self, non-self, your body is exquisitely tuned to figure out non-self. So we had no experience with having the body produce this sort of non-self garbage, right? And it turned out to be a big misadventure. It killed a lot of people, harmed a lot of people. This is how biology works. This is absolutely the case. And this guy knows better, and he knows it, and he's still choosing to lie. So that makes it pretty bad.
Viral vector platform. Both of them had gone into trials with different diseases 10 years earlier. So we had more
different diseases. Who the hell cares? Who cares? It's totally irrelevant.
Up our sleeve than people thought. And what they did was to run parallel studies, phase 1, then phase 2, then phase 3 proving it was effective in tens of thousands.
Effective at what?
So that they sped it up, but they didn't cut corners. The safety was an issue.
Of course they cut corners. Obviously, they couldn't see if there was a third generation impact on fertility. Of course, they couldn't see if there was a 10-year incidence in rise in cancers and neoplasms. Of course, there are a lot of things you can't do. This is normally part of drug development, particularly vaccine development. And he knows this. He already knows this. You can't say, oh, they didn't cut corners. Of course they did. Time was a corner that had to get cut by definition. There was no chance to do long-range studies. Right? There was no chance to find out, is there some sort of a combination effect? There was no chance to figure out things like, well, what if somebody got a vaccine, but they were naive, meaning they hadn't had COVID yet, but versus somebody who had COVID? Or what if somebody had alpha COVID, then got a jab? What if somebody got a jab and then got beta? What if somebody had a jab, then got delta, then got 2 more jabs? Like, we didn't know any, you couldn't have known any of that. Could not have known any of that. And by the way, those were all good questions I just asked, like we should know. And people like this guy were busy saying we shouldn't gather that data. They blocked every effort to try and figure this stuff out, right? Why? Because never ask a question you're pretty sure you don't want the answer to. And when your answer is, I need to figure out a way so that the people who pay me all that money that I just showed you here, so that I need to figure out a way that these people can keep paying me money. And that's the answer I'm going to give you. This is science for hire. It's what it looks like. The banality of evil. There it is. Looks like him.
And we do recognise that AstraZeneca vaccine was associated with serious clots and did result in serious cases and deaths. We recognise that. But
why didn't we know that at the time, though, if there was that 10 years of research beforehand?
Because it had never been given to tens of thousands. You only found it out when tens of thousands got it, because the risk was about 1 in 50,000.
The risk of what? He's talking about one specific risk, which is the risk of a blood clot leading to a cerebral hemorrhage, I think. But there were other risks, right? There were risks of myocarditis, pericarditis, blood disorders, clotting. There's those big white calamari fibrous clots that were coming out of dead people, which, again, they didn't do any autopsies on because they just couldn't not ask the question fast enough. There were neurological disorders and immunological disorders, as well as now a pretty steep rise in cancers. All of these things, he's again, cherry picking. And by the way, this isn't how the world works. I'm going to have to use my data paddle on you, you knucklehead. That's not, you don't. No, not yours. You do not get to redefine science on the spot and say, oh, well, this one thing is a chance of 1 in 50,000.
But if you got COVID, the risk was 5 to 10 times higher. So
no, not true. Give your sources, because I got sources that tell you you're full of S on that one.
If we'd let rip and got COVID, we would have people having Delta and getting clots in their lungs and in their brains at a probably 10 times higher rate.
Delta was a beast. No question about it. It was a few months out of the whole adventure. How about now, Doc? Okay. So, all right, got that one. All right. And by the way, something I think that the good doc should be able to explain for us is this. How is this true, right? Once praised for the world's highest vaccination rate, Portugal now sports the highest excess death rate. Are these connected things? We should know. It's not just there. Excess deaths, Australia, 9%, Canada, 3%, Denmark, 30%, England, 20%, Finland, 9%, France, 25%, Germany, 43%. Ouch, these are bad numbers. These are really bad numbers. They look terrible on a chart. Why is this? How do we explain this? Well, we ought to have some curiosity, and maybe we should be looking into that just a little bit. Now, let me see if I can... Oh, yeah, this is good, too.
2021, within 2 hours, I started having an adverse reaction to Pfizer.
2 hours?
I've now been bedbound pretty much for 2.5 years. I slip between the cracks. I'm under the care of a neurologist, 2 gastroenterologists, a cardiologist. I fundamentally got long-haul COVID from the vaccine because I already had a heightened immune system.
Yeah. Look, I'm not sure I can give you an apology from anyone here tonight, but let's just try and get a better understanding. Robert, one of the things I worried about in the messaging at the time...
Let me skip over that for real quick, because he's just more junky of an answer. There's a really good... Okay, listen to this woman. So
I was one of the...
All right. Now, here, this woman, random woman from the audience, is going to ask the questions that you or I have been asking. I mean, this is what a normal, intelligent human being sounds like. Let's listen in.
A few people in the legal sector who took on the TGA and the rest of the government establishment for government corruption and medical corruption. My question to you is, as a person who is not vaccinated, who did not take a single COVID-19 vaccine, why isn't there a research done 3 years in now comparing the immune systems of those who got the first dose, the second dose, and the third dose, and the aftermath, and the latency periods, in comparison to how the non-vaccinated are faring right now? We have a society that is chronically ill in winter season, and it is not the unvaccinated. Thank you very much.
Robert?
Oh.
Why don't I give that one to you?
Clappity, clappity, clap, clap, clap. Right? These are the most obvious questions of all. This is, of course, what should be done. And, of course, that's not what happened. And Robert gives some other stupid dissembling answer, which, of course, serves his paymasters over on the Pfizer side. and GlaxoSmithKline Pharmacide. All right, so here's the story as we understand it right now. Common knowledge is breaking out. You can see the whole audience is having none of this. And maybe this was a hand-picked audience. It's a little hostile, but it doesn't matter. Now other people have gotten to see that it's okay to be in a room full of other people and go, and begin to shout these people down. You can see the obvious discomfort of these gatekeepers, right? All those people up there on the panel, you know, the two guys who are like trying to like pretend like this was all normal and usual. And they love to give that. Billions of doses were given and nothing bad happened. I'm like, did you see those excess death figures I just showed? I don't know what's wrong with these people, right? But it either shows that when somebody has a conflict of interest, they are able to override their frontal cortex and they are no longer able to see things or connect dots, or they can't think clearly anymore. I don't know what the process is, but our job is to recognize right away when we're in the presence of one of these people, because we shouldn't listen to them and we shouldn't spend any time giving them any sort of validation for being complete bowl turds in this story. Common knowledge is breaking out, and the way it breaks out faster is when you are brave and you say something right on the spot when it's most uncomfortable, and you say, oh no, I don't believe that's how that happened. I'm hearing more and more stories from people all the time about this, where they are going back home for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for Easter, or whatever. They're getting back home, maybe July 4th, which is just coming up, and now people are going to be able to go at a family gathering, hey, I'm pretty sure that Aunt Sally went downhill really quick post-jab, right? And and eventually everybody's just going to go, oh, yeah, right? Because it's common knowledge. Remember, Arthur Schopenhauer said all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed, then it's ignored, and then it's accepted is self-evident. We're getting to that third stage, the common knowledge stage. We get there faster when you are brave and you speak out, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it might cost you a relationship. But it's just going to cost you a relationship with somebody like this Robert guy, who probably isn't worth being in a relationship with in the first place, because their job mentally, emotionally, and I'm not sure about morally, but whatever, however they construct themselves, their job is to defend an obviously bogus statistic and worldview that's deeply damaging and wrong. You decide if you want to hang out with those people or not. Maybe he knows excellent baseball statistics and brews a good micro. I don't know. But otherwise, from a professional standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint, I don't want to spend any of my time hanging around people like that guy. What a waste. And he should know that. And these people should no longer feel comfortable going out in public and showing themselves, because they are such an embarrassment to themselves. And they've done so much harm and damage by misusing their authority and misapplying their intelligence in the service of evil. And by the way, folks, it's time to put on your jerseys. You got to pick a team. Are you on team evil, team not evil? Where do you stand? That is the thing we have to figure out now. I'm going to take the rest of this conversation back to Peak Prosperity with my subscribers, because, as you know, these scouting reports run long. I got a lot of stuff to talk about. It was a very busy weekend. We'll be talking about the big populist thing that's breaking across all of Europe right now. And we've got to talk about some of the breaks I think are coming pretty soon in the economic markets. For everybody else, thanks very much for listening. We'll be back with you with our next scouting report. See you later. Bye-bye.